Hello and welcome to Connecting Hawaii Business on ThinkTech Hawaii. My name is Kathleen Lee and I am your host for this program. Today we will be talking about 53 Tuesdays, a debut novel by author Gary Nakata. I am excited to introduce the author of 53 Tuesdays and my friend Gary Nakata on the show today. Gary, welcome to Connecting Hawaii Business.
Thank you, Kathleen. It's a pleasure and honor to be on this side of the screen from you and not just an audience participant and watching you do your good stuff.
That's wonderful. Gary, tell our viewers about yourself.
Well, I guess I'm a banker and lawyer by trade. That's how everybody describes me. I started off in banking and then went on to become a lawyer. I did a stunt in, city government, and I'm an avid UH volleyball fan and amateur karaoke singer and amateur behavioral scientist and amateur in probably 3 or 4 different things, and a much less than amateur golfer at the moment. So that kind of keeps me busy.
You sound like a very well-rounded person there, Gary. I love that. And let's launch into the book, 53 Tuesdays. First, and thank you for that cover. Let's talk about your inspiration for it. Like, what led you to, because you had mentioned that you are a banker, a lawyer, and all of that, right? You do all these things, and yet writing a book is an endeavor that takes up a lot of time and commitment. So tell us your inspiration and what motivated you to start it and finish it.
Okay, well, I've always wanted to write a book, and I thought I'd start writing a 100-pager self-help book about how to deal with all our trials and tribulations in life, and called something like Owning Your Misery and Being Able to Control Your Misery. So among all the amateur statuses I have, I think I mentioned I'm an amateur behavioral scientist, and I like to tinker with what makes people think and what makes them act the way they do. And so when I left city government, and I had some time to myself to actually work on the project, but actually one day I decided, to take a walk around the neighborhood that I live in, and I was hungry and I wanted a beer and I wanted to watch the game that night. And so, let's talk about the elephant in the room. The book is about a love story that takes place in a hostess bar. In Hawaii, everybody's heard of these hostess bars, and everybody has a different notion of what they are and different experiences. And having been in business, I've been to them a couple of times, and I was given a short list of rules, and to safely traverse going into one of these places. And one of those rules happened to be, if you're sitting at the bar, you're not going to get worried. The other thing that I was taught was they make some of the best food in the world. And so that day I was hungry. I wanted to go eat. I saw this sign that said free poo-poos. And so I said, this will be great. And for those of you that have read the book, I'm talking about chapter 5, really. And so I walk into this place, and even before I take 2 or 3 steps in there, these 3 ladies come. I wouldn't say walking, I'd say more like trotting towards me with their arms outstretched. And I definitely got spooked. I got really, really scared. I didn't know what to do. Having been a former city official, the first thing I thought is, oh my God, scandal. The reporters are outside probably waiting to catch me with all these scandalous shots. I'm going to be in all the tabloids. But more than that, I had to get my butt out of there because they were getting really close. And so I just backed out. I ran out into the garage really quickly. And I was breathing hard, and I think I was scared out of my wits. And I thought, okay, I'm safe, right? And I hear the door creak open, like, ee, and I hear stiletto heels or whatever on gravel coming towards me. And they were still coming towards me. And I was like, oh, I'm going to get kidnapped. I'm going to get kidnapped. I'm going to get human trafficked. I don't know. I'm going to get thrown in the cauldron, boiled alive. All these scenarios are going through your head. And I'm a grown man, and I'm a martial artist. And I was scared. So I didn't know what to do. So I ran into the first establishment I could find. There's this cafe next door. It's nice little, frilly umbrella thing outside and nice double doors. So I ran in, and the first thing I thought was, okay, typical restaurant. They've got a waiting area, bar in the front. And it kind of looks like Licky Licky driving off to the restaurant side, orange high back booth. And I'm literally shaking and breathing. The bartender, she comes over and she goes, "Oh, well, are you okay?" And I said, and I'm huffing and puffing. And she goes, sit down, just sit down. I said, she goes, "What's wrong?" I said, I pointed outside and I named the place, and she started laughing. And obviously, it's happened before. She said, "Just sit down, calm down. You're okay here. Sit." So I say, "Okay." Um, and long story short, I stay there for a couple hours. I'm watching the game. I'm sipping my beer. They've got some poo-poos. Happened to be somebody's birthday party that night, so they had another room all filled with beer. And I'm like, "Oh, this is great. This is a legit bar. This is a real bar. I don't have to worry. Okay, I'm not going to get accosted." And there's only guys in there, right? Right. And I don't never used to go to bars. I never had an idea what a bar was. And so I sat there and I'm having a really great time. And then these ladies walk in, like 4 or 5 ladies, and they're very, very pretty, very like wow. I'm like, okay. Um, so I turned to the guy next to me. I turned to the guy next to me and said, "Hey, is this ladies' night? Is this ladies' night? I mean, what's going on? How come all the ladies are coming in here?" And the guy turns to me, he looks at me, and he goes, "Bruh, you know this on hostess bar? Huh? That's first shift." And my face just went, "Oh God." And the first thought was, "Oh no." And the bartender that had helped me earlier, she saw the look on my face. She saw me starting to pack all my wallet and stuff. And she comes running over and she touches my forehead ever so lightly. She goes, "Love, you're gonna be okay." And she can't help suppressing her laugh. Right? You're gonna be okay. Nobody's gonna talk to you. You can just sit here and enjoy yourself. I said, are you?" And I'm studying like, are you? She goes, "Yes, I promise you." So I said, "Okay." The rest of the night is for the readers and the fans out there to figure out what happened for the rest of chapter 5. But suffice it to say, I made a few friends that night. And I got to literally, in a very relaxed mode, be able to observe interactions in the bar. Not only the women there, the employees, but the men that got there. And somewhere along the line, a notion came to me. What would happen if somebody walked into one of these places um, and fell in love? And I think for the most part, men could go in there, they could fall in love. But what happens, right, if the female, if the woman reciprocates? But more importantly, what happens if they've got issues, and what happens if they don't tell each other, and what happens if they go through all the trials and tribulations of the usual romance? So I love this thing about analyzing people's behavior, what makes them tick. I see people getting into fights, not all that night, in subsequent nights. And I see people bonding. I see stories come out. Somebody comes and tells me these two individuals have seen each other for years. And then one night I'm there, a couple walks in. I said, "Oh, that's interesting," because I didn't know she works tonight, and she's with her customer. And the other woman comes up to me and goes, "No, they're dating." So I'm like, "If they're dating, why are they here at the bar?" And she goes, "Well, what do you like to do when you date?" I go, "Well, I go where my friends are." And she goes, "Where do you think their friends are?" So they're here. So I'm like, wow, that is an interesting dynamic. So I go through all of these, and one day I go, this will make a good story. Somebody comes in here and falls in love. Then what? And the rest of that is a few beers, a few songs, making a few friends, making a whole lot of observations, and putting it all together into one big, fun, exciting adventure.
I love that. And thank you. I'm humbled to have read the book before it got published. So I appreciate that, Gary. Would you say that if someone were to talk about the themes of the book and described it as um, talking about ideas of self-esteem, loss, and love in different forms, is that a fair assessment of the book? Or how would you describe it to someone that has never read it before with just the description that you had mentioned earlier? It's about observations from hostess bars, like you mentioned.
It's a political operative that walks into a hostess bar and falls in love with the hostess. In the book, he walks in, much like I do, gets scared into going there, but he's introduced to someone there that only desired to sit next to him because another customer was giving her a hard time, and they somehow befriend each other over bodybuilding, that kind of stuff. But the theme of the book really is two broken people find their solutions in each other. They get to feel their respective personality pukas, and yet, because of other issues that they have, they cause more trouble. So we've got issues of validation, self-esteem. We've got daddy issues. We've got mommy issues. But particularly, most of these behavioral issues come down to one of the validation or the lack of validation thereof, and where you get the validation from. So they go through their ups and downs, and throughout the book, the readers that have talked to me have said, they're constantly not necessarily rooting for the characters because they everybody knows characters like these, right? They know people that go from relationship to relationship, or they know characters, people that are self-sabotaging. They find the right person, yet for whatever reason, they feel they're not worthy of that person, so they actually self-sabotage. And so they're not necessarily rooting for the people, but they're rooting for the relationship because somewhere in the middle of the book, people are going to see that these two are perfect for each other. They, with all their frailties, with all their brokenness, all the baggage and problems they bring to the table, they complete one another. And then the most frustrating part is, you know, they just don't know it. They don't know it because of all the other frailties they've got. And so you sit there just hoping, can you open your eyes? Can you see what's in front of you? Can you see what you have? And forget about everybody else that's hurt you. Forget about all your other issues. Just concentrate on how you feel when you're with each other. And can you make that work? I'm actually quoting a fan that had lunch with me, and he goes, "Wow, midway through the book, that's how I felt." And I said, "Did you read it to the end of the book?" He goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Are you satisfied?" He goes, "Well, I'll tell you next time we have lunch." Okay. Well, give me a cliffhanger, thank you. And if that fan is watching this, yeah, you owe me lunch. I bought you lunch last time.
Good message to put out there. So, Gary, here's a question that I just thought of while listening to you. As an individual who has held, I would say, high profile positions in the various professions that you've been in, what were your thoughts in writing on a topic that may not have been explored as much before, that some people may find well, like people just don't talk much about it. So what was your thought process? What were your concerns when it came to writing about that particular environment that the book is set in?
Uh, you know, what I found out is, it's a topic not a lot of people openly talk about in public, but among close friends, everybody has had an experience going to one of these places, especially the male. Initially, I was very, very concerned how it would be taken and what people would say about me. But then, as I shared it with friends and colleagues, but mostly friends who've known me for a long time, after expressing surprise at the venue chosen and where I went to sing karaoke songs, actually, they realize that it's a love story that is just set in a particular venue. And I'm not condoning that venue. I'm not glamorizing it. I'm just saying it how it is. So initially I was really concerned, but the more I talked to people about it, the more it was basically, okay, it's a great story set in that venue. And then the people that didn't know me too well, it turned into a real like, okay, tell us more about that industry. Tell us more about what goes on in all these other places in the bars. And frankly, I'd only been to one or two of them, so I couldn't tell them apart from what I knew. I could tell them what I knew, what I heard from other people. So initially, to answer your question, Kathleen, I was concerned, but I wasn't about to hold back. I had such an itch to get this story out. It was basically, um, I'll put it out there and then see what happens. And those people that know me um, will think one way, and those people that don't know me will think some other way. But at the end of the day, somebody once told me, if you got a good story, um, just get it out there and let the story take care of itself. And that's exactly what's happening. You know, you and I talked about all the accolades that the book is getting, and people, no, not one person has written back to me and said, "Oh, you know that that's a terrible venue that you're putting." And I think if you read the book to the very end, you'll see that there's a message in there that really counterbalances everything else everybody's saying. But I've got no less than 5 or 6 people that want me to take them on a tour of all these places in town because they had always had other ideas about it. And as one editorial person once told me, she goes, I actually humanized it. And the way she explained it was, you know, Gary, I think people just want to know the human aspect and want to get to know the human beings that work there. That's okay. That's good. So yeah, at first I was concerned, now I'm not. There seems to be a following.
From the process of, starting the book to the wonderful accolades that, the novel has gotten, could you walk us through your timeline?
Okay, so initially, you know, I just scribbled notes of people's behaviors, right? This guy's acting this way and she's acting this way because it's supposed to dovetail into my other book about how to deal with behavior. So I spent some time scribbling notes, about a year or so, and getting to know other people really, really well. And then at the end of a year and a half, one day I said, I got this really great idea for the ending, and it wouldn't go away. So I wrote the ending. I really did. Well, the ending before, and 3 or 4 pages. I mean, and I let somebody else read it that was an avid romance reader, and she broke down crying. And I knew I had something. So I just had to write a beginning and a middle and a backstory to all that. And it just mushroomed from there into a timeline. I went to another job. I told the guy, you know, I need 6 months to write this first draft. He gave me 2 months. He said, "Well, hold your job for 2 months." And so I spent like every day and night writing this first draft. Um, and with like 4 hours of sleep a night. And on the 59th day, I finally was completed, about 300 pages worth. And the adventures just came to me. Things that I recollected from the bar, things that I heard about at the bar, notes that I had taken, you know, and stuff that you see in daily life, that kind of stuff. And I just put them all together and just use my imagination. You know, it helped that I drank 4 Diet Cokes and ate a bag of M&M peanuts every night, and that sugar rush really helped. But that's pretty much a timeline. Then I found a publisher, and we went through about a year and a half or 2 years of actually polishing the book. And you know, I can't thank them enough for all the work that they did. And this superb piece of writing came out. It was a real collaboration. And throughout all, you know, I felt some divine inspiration behind me. So I just kept my prayers going upwards, and I said, "You sure you want me to write this book?" And I never got a no. Sometimes I got a nod. So I just said, "Hey, you know what? What comes comes." 4 years till now.
4 years. Gary,
Four
what are
years.
some lessons that you've learned throughout this book writing process? Because again, this is your debut novel and it's garnered so many awards. So people out there can follow 53 Tuesdays on Instagram and you can see a bulk of the recognition that 53 Tuesdays has gotten. So what are some lessons that you've learned during this process?
Uh, One lesson is there's a lot of good sources on the internet on how to write a book. Um, and there is a science and an art to writing a book. And I think I bought like about $100 worth of books from Amazon, starting with how to outline a book down to how to fill in the backstory. And all you got to do is Google how to write a book. And you come to all kinds of websites telling you how to write a book. And what you do is you take 3 or 4 leading websites or 3 or 4 leading books, and if they all say the same thing, you ought to follow it. You know, the other thing is to reach out to authors that have written books, ask them what they think is really really important. So I really got lucky. I think I fell into some really good websites that took me from A to Z, and I bought 3 or 4 books that really taught me how to get an outline going and how to polish it up. So by the time it got to the publisher, it was a really really good book, and the president of the company decided to make his own project. So I'll tell you this, Kathleen, and anybody that's watching this, they can contact me through you, and if they're interested in writing a book, I'll turn them on to the resources, because it's a lot of hit and miss. But all I'm going to say is the resources out there. Do what the resources tell you to do, and you're going to come out fine. The idea will be yours. Everybody else is about how to make your idea come out in the best way possible.
And you've touched on this earlier before we started the show, what are some future plans or vision that you have for this book? Since you started
Suffice
it
it to
out, right?
say, okay, then I'll tell you what I can tell you. There's things that I already told you that I'm under a non-disclosure agreement not to mention, but I'll just say this. Obviously, when J.K. Rowling, I'm following the same path J.K. Rowling's taking with her books, right? Obviously, there's an idea for a sequel, and I'm telling everybody if there's a following, I'll write the sequel. I've already got that planned out. People are clamoring for audiobooks. J.K. Rowling did an audiobook. J.K. Rowling also went into the movies, which is a natural entertainment extension. That's also a possibility. And when you get to movies and Broadway plays, and initially I wrote the book in a way where it could be transformed into a Broadway screenplay very easily. So that's kind of a dream of mine. And those of you that read it will see that there's a natural soundtrack that comes with it. So that's some of the extensions. That's some of the things that's going to keep me busy. Uh, my preference is that it becomes an overnight success. I make a lot of money, and I can just golf every weekend. And if that's the case, that's great. But I also believe this, and and I talked about this all the time. There is a central message to this book that I'd like the entire world to grasp and understand. And I don't mind saying that the central message is love does conquer all, in many ways, shapes, and forms. And I'd love the people who get this not to think of it as some story about a hostess bar, but it's a story about how love can conquer all our infirmities if we just let love take its course.
Is there
That
anything?
would make a great review, actually.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you would like to add in the few minutes that we have left that what we have yet to touch upon?
Well, I don't know how many viewers are watching this that haven't read the book yet. All I know is that it's on Amazon. Amazon lets you download the first 10 chapters as a sample. And I do know that the people that didn't want to buy the book, but did download the sample, eventually bought the book. I don't know one person that's come to me and said, I read the sample, Gary, didn't like it, so I didn't download the book. Everybody got hooked by chapter 7.
Yeah, I mean, and I would love for people to read the book as well so they can figure out why it's titled 53 Tuesdays. So,
Yeah, and people said that was a pretty cute trick or pretty cute gimmick, that went on. And so what I do is I say, anybody that reads the book and can tell me or prove to me they read the book, I'm all up for having lunch with them, having group dinners, and just talking about the ramifications. There are people that want to talk to me about the religious ramifications. People want to talk about the behavioral ramifications. People that want to talk about the multicultural ramification. And I didn't realize it would affect people so broadly and in so many categories. But Kathleen, if you kind of take a look at the awards that I got, romance, multicultural fiction, there's even some Christian book contests that kind of recognize the book as one of the as something valuable.
that's interesting
And so,
too. Can you, with a few minutes that we have left, can you go down that path and talk
which
about
one?
that for a bit, as to how
Uh,
it relates to the Christian audience?
well, sure. We've got Glenn, who's the protagonist. He's what I call a broken Christian. Somebody that has a real deep love for God and knows that God loves for him, but he's always asking why and why he has to follow these rules. And you know, at a very young age, decided to follow the path, and yet he struggles internally with sin and worldly things. And I've read a lot of Christian novels where the protagonist is this really, really strong religious person, and they conquer evil that way. And I'd say that this is not that book. This is a book about what 95% of all our believers go through. We want to be pious. We want to be on the straight and narrow road, but we stumble, and we stumble every day. And when we say love conquers all, of all weeks, Kathleen, this is Holy Week for me, right? Palm Sunday, it was this past Sunday, Easter Sunday, it's this, like, we all stumble. And and I don't want to turn this into a sermon, but I'll say it because you opened it. Through the love of one individual, that conquered all, we all have a chance at life again. Only though, if we allow that love to conquer in our lives. And so it's kind of like, give love a chance. You may feel broken, but other people won't see you as broken. If other people don't see you as broken, you shouldn't see yourself as broken. Give love a chance, and not just loving others, love yourself. Give the idea of loving yourself back to health a chance. And I think all that is wrapped up in this book, right? And at the end of it, Glenn finds some reconciliation. And I think people will argue whether there was a happy ending or there wasn't a happily ever after. But I do know that every person that's talked about this book and read that book had deep thoughts afterwards. I know one guy that kind of just said he sat back in his chair for an hour and just thought about life. I was like, wow, if it brings transformation to people's lives, then great. That was its purpose. If it's just entertainment, great.
I appreciate that. And Gary, thank you for being on the show today to talk about
Sure.
53 Tuesdays, your debut novel. And if people are interested in learning more about it, there is an Instagram for it, 53 Tuesdays, and the book can be found on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and on Apple Books. Again, thank you, Gary. I'm excited
Kathleen.
to see what is in store for the book. So,
yeah, book me a spot about 2 years from now. I think about 2 years from now, we'll have a lot to share.
okay. Thanks, Gary. And thank you to ThinkTech Hawaii as well, and Jay Fidel
Thank you,
for making shows like this possible. We had Haley and
Thank you,
Ash
Mr. Fidel.
today. So thank you so much. And until next time, aloha.
Thank you so much for watching ThinkTech Hawaii. If you like what we do, please like us and click the subscribe button on YouTube and the follow button on Vimeo. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and donate to us at thinktechhawaii.com. Mahalo.